Today we're going to look at government-issued securities, things like municipal bonds, for example. We'll look at a few different styles of municipal bonds and then how to handle them from an accounting perspective. Before we begin, let's look at statement number 28 under the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This statement is titled Accounting and Financial Reporting for Securities Lending Transactions. A securities lending transaction is when a government issues and transfers its securities to a broker-dealer for some collateral such as cash. Governments participate in these transactions when they might need liquid capital to begin various projects. From the borrower's perspective, it's called shorting when you borrow a security to turn around and sell it. The borrower is hoping that the market value of the security will decline so that he can fulfill his obligation by buying back the security at a new lower price. Since governments often participate in lending these securities, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board thought it would be necessary to clearly lay out the requirements for these transactions. The main idea behind this statement is that securities lending transactions are heavily regulated and require lots of disclosure. The government would be required to disclose what kind of securities they lent, what type of collateral they received, and what they intend to do with it. Since the borrower often has to pay fees such as agency and lending fees, this is a good way for governments to make stable, conservative income. To further understand government-issued securities, I'll get into the different types and the different characteristics that are often involved. One of the most common ways for municipal governments to raise capital is by issuing municipal bonds. One of the cool things about municipal bonds is that they are entirely tax-exempt on the federal level. This means that the holder of a municipal bond can collect tax-free interest and capital gains. For this reason, municipal bonds are very attractive to investors who are in a high tax bracket. For example, if your ordinary income from other investments would otherwise be taxed at 33%, it's a great idea to invest in municipal bonds where that income would not be taxed at all. Now, there are two different kinds of municipal bonds that we'll look at. The first is a general obligation bond, which is backed by the full faith of the municipality that issued it. The collateral that secures these bonds are the government's various streams of income, such as income tax, sales tax, and property tax. From the investor's standpoint, you do need to be aware that there is some risk of default involved with general obligation bonds. To assess this risk, you should analyze the general economic condition of the town or the county that the government has jurisdiction over. There may also be financial issues within the government, such as unfunded pension liabilities. However, general obligation bonds are a pretty safe investment, and for that reason, the interest rates are not very high. The other kind of bond that a municipality might issue is called a revenue bond. Revenue bonds are issued to raise capital for specific projects. Revenue bonds might be issued to raise capital for building bridges, turnpikes, or sewer systems. The unique thing about revenue bonds is that they're backed by the income that will be generated in the future by the completion of that project. For example, a government might issue revenue bonds in order to raise money for building a new bridge that people have to pay to cross. The income that bridge generates will go toward paying back the revenue bonds. Revenue bonds and general obligation bonds are the primary securities that municipalities will issue. They're both excellent tools for government entities to raise capital, and it's very important to learn all about how they work.